Back in an hour. Thank you. Bye.
An example of a corporate, AGC. It's a Japan company. Brian will tell us more. Window of sustainable transportation. Thank you. And please be quiet. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon. Is everybody well fed? It was a very good lunch. Thank you. Okay. So, Michael, I appreciate the invitation to come here and talk about sustainable transportation and how AGC fits this role. I would stand up here, but I tend to pace and I would trip over this table about 12 times. So, let's start here. So AGC for more than 110 years has been contributing to the livelihoods and industrial development, guided by our group vision that we will continue to provide new materials and solutions to meet the changing needs of the era. Aiming to be an essential part of this world, at the same time strongly committed to sustainable development of countries worldwide with the hope of ensuring a bright future for our planet. This is the words of our CEO, Shimamura-san, and has been kind of the guiding principle of AGC for quite a while. Just a quick overview, AGC Group is a large multinational headquartered in Tokyo, $15 billion US dollars, 50,000 employees worldwide, and in 210 unique products and businesses. This is a bit of an eye chart, but just to give you a sense of what we're in, some construction, fluoropolymer films. If anybody has flown into the Hartsfield-Jackson Airport in Atlanta at the International Terminal, outside is that big, the new film coating that AGC provides, in addition to other architectural needs. I'm going to zero in on the transportation sector here in a little bit, specifically about mobility, but I wanted to give you a little background on AGC itself. So additional things that we're in, fluoropolymer coatings, consumer products, zero mercury, caustic sodas. So we have a chemicals group, we have a biologics group where they make good drugs, not the fun drugs. So a little bit of the wide range of industries that AGC serves. So looking toward ESG, in 2014, through our energy saving and energy creating products, we want to enable the avoidance of over six times our annual CO2 emissions in 2020. Currently, obviously, going through that data collection and calculation, but by all measures, it looks like that will actually be met. In addition, for 2030, we're going to work on our long-term goals and continue to revitalize and further environmental management. And this really gets into life cycle management of our products. One example I can give you is an automobile has a definitive life, or a finite life, I should say. And what happens to the glass? Can that be recovered after the fact? Can that be recycled? How is that going to be reused? That's a problem that we have not solved yet. It's not that the glass isn't recyclable, it's all the stuff that goes in it and on it that poses the challenge. Yep. So, some environmental measures, just to give you a sense of what we are into. Low E glass, low emission, so not only do we try to keep the heat out, we try to keep the cool air in, or vice versa, depending on which part of the world you're from. Our fluoropolymer film, which I already talked about a little bit, but increasing productivity for things like greenhouse building and coatings, being able to extend growing seasons in certain areas or on certain farms. Next generation refrigerant to drastically reduce our global warming potential. And then we have, again, some solutions for separating chemicals and creating caustic soda without any mercury in it, which is wonderful if you were in the water treatment industry. Some other things that we do for social contribution are coral reef conservation products using PVC pipes. We can talk about the merits of using plastic to build coral reefs some other time. But that is going on in Thailand and Indonesia, and then we have some educational support in Brazil, working with the local NGO. We've seen a number of these already with the SDGs, but again, by putting together our technologies and human resources, our efforts are to accelerate and solve social issues around the world in the products that we touch. So what does that have to do with transportation? I specifically focus in the automotive sector, and the mobility impacts are a little more than just getting people from point A to point B. Everybody's economy is dependent on getting goods from one place to another. That is done obviously through transportation. What does a glass company have to do with that piece? So in looking at what we do, AGC is a glass company, but we're more of a technological company that manufactures glass. Making glass is easy. Making the stuff that goes into the glass and how that glass functions is where the challenge and advantage comes. So we are the first in the glass industry to build a global tripolar antenna in our R&D group. These antennas can be used for vehicle-to-vehicle communication, vehicle-to-person communication. There's other AI impacts that will go into this as well. 360 user-friendly information display. Things like our flexible screens, our windshields. Everyone has different shapes. One of the more challenging things is you're seeing more glass in cars than ever before, where you will get the panoramic windows or the front light that goes from the front all the way over the back of the car. So all of these pose some unique challenges, not only with the technology, but then how cars communicate with one another. So our strategy group did some research on global trends in mobility. And what they found, by 2030, there will be 8.4 billion people on this world. Half of those are going to be in Asia, 60% are going to be in urban areas. That's a staggering number. High demand for food, double the demand for water. 4.8 billion of those are going to be online. 30 to 40% of the jobs are going to be robotized. We're going to be transitioning from ownership to sharing everything. You're seeing that in some cases now. You see it with the Lime scooters around town here. You see it with bicycles, and you're going to start seeing more with connected vehicles. So what's going to change all this decision-making rules are Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, big data. So if you think of a connected car, self-driving, autonomous, fully autonomous vehicle, trying to navigate the streets of Athens. People coming from all different directions. Cars from everywhere. Okay, other traffic signals. How does a car navigate that safely and prevent car to car, car to person? That requires a ton of technology going into that. A lot of artificial intelligence, a lot of camera technology, and a lot of communication equipment. Mobility. So shared mobility is going to improve asset utilization. I'm going to give you some data from the US because that's all I have. But if you look at vehicles, the days of the $20,000 vehicle are pretty much behind us. So to buy a new car, you're looking at $30,000, $35,000, $40,000 for a modest vehicle. If you want to go with what Michael drives, you're going to spend more than that. Where is he?
There he is.
Oh, he's hiding. Okay.
He was just looking
All
at
right.
himself in his BMW.
Yeah.
He took a picture of himself with the BMW.
So if you think of a vehicle as an asset, you are using that asset 5 to 10% of the times. How much of your personal capital is tied up in that vehicle for utilizing it 5 to 10% of the time? Put yourself in a manufacturing environment. If you had a facility that was at 5 or 10% capacity, what would you do? You continue to operate it, or do you go get more business and try to utilize that asset more and more and more? So, it's going to be a combination of ownership, so control will exist. Would it be better to spend that money on a car, use it 5 to 10% of the time, and then park it the rest of the time, or spend that money on the vehicle, it drives you to your job, then that car goes out and continues to earn until you need it back, and then it comes to get you, takes you back home, and it can continue to operate. That will change the face of public transportation. That will change the operational. That will require new approaches to maintenance and service. So sales service will look radically different. New interiors, lighting structure, the styling will grow. The concept vehicles that you're seeing are coming to market faster than they ever have. All right, within the automotive industry, the focus is switching on the user experience with unique offerings. So think of your cell phone. Before it was just a device to make phone calls. Now it's a GPS, now it's a radio, now it's a communication tool, it's a tracking tool, it's information overload, it's your internet. All right, most people don't even have phones in their home anymore. It's with you all the time. Car can be no different. It's going to shift from a thing that you own to a device that you use. So specialized vehicles for the unable or unwilling to drive. This is where we get back into the connected car and self-driving. So mega suppliers are going to be in control of niche vehicle. You're seeing that now with Tesla, with their testing that they are using. Very little competition right now in that sector. OEMs, so the big automotive companies, Daimler, BMW, GM, Ford, Toyota, Honda, they will go to transition to leasing or renting vehicles to mobility providers. This one I think is important. Less accidents and the preventive maintenance are improved. Another statistic in the United States, which I found interesting, so we'll go back in history a little bit. In the 1970s, does anybody have any idea how many automobile deaths there were in the United States on average roughly in the 70s? Any guesses? About 35,000 deaths per year. In the 1980s, when seatbelt laws took effect, guess how many deaths there were as a result, or on average per year in the 80s? About 38,000 a year. No, but same. Yes. In the 90s, okay, what do you think happened? Airbags, right. Guess how many automobile deaths on average there were in the 1990s? About 38,000 deaths a year.
So you're saying as the mileage is booming, as the number is going up, the deaths are level?
That's exactly the point.
Yeah.
So what's also happened during that time is the number of miles that have been driven, kilometers, sorry, forgot where it was. The number of vehicles on the road has increased significantly, but the deaths remain the same. So the concept is relatively simple. We can't change the driver. We can continue to add safety devices. Connected cars have an ability to really impact that number. And if you think years and years in the future, connected cars with constant communication, it takes a lot of the decision making away from the driver. you know, to that, you see that light turn yellow, and what do you, in America, the light turns yellow, what does that mean? Hit the gas a little bit so you get through the intersection, right? Okay, maybe that's different over here. I don't know. All right, there are some places where red lights are a suggestion. So now, if you have a connected car, that light sends a signal, that car slows down and it stops. You don't get that choice to override it. So, can we make a positive impact in society by reducing 38, and that's just in the US. I don't know what the numbers are in Europe, but in Asia they're even worse. I mean, if you've seen some of the chaos in Southeast Asia with transportation, you ever try to cross a street in Vietnam? It's an experience. All right. Now, there's going to be some regional variations. Varying needs based on infrastructure readiness. We kind of know how to do this with the AI and the cameras and the technology on infrastructure that's already established. But how do you do it down here? I don't know the answer to that. But that's a dilemma that is trying to be solved. Africa and Asia are still going to depend a lot on traditional transport. Again, infrastructure reasons, population, availability. New technologies are going to leapfrog lagging regions. So if you look at the telephone or the cell phone, in Africa, they use cell phones for banking. You know, they're not going through the landline and the, you know, calling the operator and connect me to 423 Birmingham Street. All right. So lagging regions are going to be more readily acceptable of autonomous vehicles. This will be a challenge specifically in regions that have a love affair with a car, like North America. If you try to tell somebody in North America that they won't need to drive, if you're under the age of 30, that's probably a great thing. If you're over the age of 30, you probably have, you know, between 30 and 60, you probably have mixed opinions. If you're over the age of 60, they grew up with their cars, you know, the open road. So it's going to be a very different conversation. Infrastructure impacts, there is going to have to be improved infrastructure, which will impact repair requirements. Roads are going to have to be more maintained because they will be traveled more. The cars are going to be working more. So what are we trying to do here? Our vision right now, and this again came from our CEO Shimamura-san, to earn the trust of society by enabling a safe, comfortable, and connected mobile community. How does glass do that? This is all done with cameras and antennas and communications tool within that glass. The glass serves as a protector for the vision systems that are needed, because if you put a camera on the outside of a vehicle, one stray stone can change your ability or change the success rate of how you can navigate that trip. So our mission is to identify, develop, and enable provisions of affordable products, technologies, and services to advance global mobility, sustainability, and safety. So this is where we're headed. Connected cars, autonomous vehicles, shared resources, and electric. This is where AGC's focus is. This is why AGC as a company spends more on R&D than any of our competitors. So, put this little graph up here. So if we look at vehicle ownership, how many people own cars? Okay, how many people don't have a car or only use Uber? Okay, a handful. All right. I expect that conversation, if this were 10 years into the future, it would probably be about half and half. 20 years, it would probably flip entirely. So, vehicle ownership from personal to shared. On the Y, on the X, we have, or sorry, on the Y, we have vehicle control, driver assisted versus autonomous. So right now we're at incremental change. These are your pickup trucks, SUVs, your regular cars, your trade vehicles. Standard what you see today, mostly. World of car sharing, so fleets are going to be composed mostly of standardized, smaller class cars with basic trim levels. You don't need a fancy car to drive you to the grocery store. The driverless revolution, as we move up into the autonomous, proliferation of the high-priced customized vehicles, and then accessible autonomy, again, to serve a wide range of needs, but mainly composed of standardized, lower-cost small vehicles. So what does that look like here? It's about asset efficiency. Again, if you're only using something 5 to 10% of the time, it's crazy to tie up that much capital of your personal capital in a vehicle. So, the ability to assist, your asset efficiency improves greatly as you move into the autonomous vehicle. So this is kind of what it looks like. You're going to have a segment here, A, so this is going to be about 50 to 70% of where we currently are. And that's basically what you see today. Segment B, you're still going to have this luxury section of people that want the cars. You know, folks that drive BMWs, for instance. No. Well, he's here. No. No, but these, you know, luxury cars, you know, the Ferraris, Lamborghinis, there's going to be a segment that wants that likes that, and so, you know, that will always be there. And I will probably say that most of these will be there in one way, shape, or form going forward, at least while I'm alive, and probably while our kids are all alive. Then you start getting into the more autonomous, not necessarily self-driving, but connected. And again, these are just concept cars. I don't think any of these are on the road right now.
But is the top left one on the road already with all that sky view?
This one?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. Michael's got to buy me one.
That's a Tesla, right? I think that's a Tesla.
I don't know what car that is.
It's beautiful.
But anyway. But yes, many of those are on the road. And then you get into conceptually what this is going to look like. A car is assembled. Does anyone know the cartoon The Jetsons from the 60s, 70s, right? You know, where you put them in a little bubble and they're off to school. That's kind of what I think about when I'm thinking of section E up there. Although I don't think we're at the flying car rate yet. My grandkid can come up and give that presentation.
There is a pilot project in Germany which is a flight taxi. So the car flying car.
So where does it land?
So there is also
Yeah. Anyway, but you can see where it's going. So the mobility industry is changing. And the point is, if companies that are in business today, if we just made glass, making glass is easy. Anybody can do it. It requires a ton of energy, but nonetheless, you can make glass. This is where everything is headed, and that's where AGC tries to position itself in the market. So we are working toward this with our R&D teams that are in there. So, some other materials that we have: electrolyte films, aspherical glass for headlamps, non-fluorinated glass filters. Again, just many different products that are out there. So AGC is positioning itself to be able to aid in this driverless revolution. And that is all I had. So any questions?
The system has one question. Cars are also associated with status and prestige. How is that going to shift? No, you know. Yes.
So I'm not certain how it's going to shift, but I think that, in my own personal opinion, I think that status and prestige will start to wane. And I'm going to give you just an example from my own life. Both my wife and I have cars. We've had them our entire lives. My daughter, who is a freshman at the university, likes to drive and wants her own vehicle, but also wants something that's easy to maintain, doesn't cost a lot of money. My son, who's 16 and learning to drive, has no desire to own a vehicle. And I'm seeing more of this going forward. There will still always be that luxury segment. I don't see that going away, but I think it's going to drastically reduce in size, especially when people start realizing those assets can go elsewhere.
Second question. No, Bruce, you need to use the system. Some of the conceptual future cars don't look very safe. Is it assumed that they are self-driving and will never crash?
Again, excellent question. Obviously, they're concepts. So in a true connected car community, if you transport yourself 30, 40, 50 years into the future, you're sitting at a red light today, traffic light. The light turns green, and if you've ever driven in Detroit or New York, the light turns green, the guy 4 cars behind you is already on the horn because he hasn't started moving.
Well, till you drive in Greece.
Yeah, okay, well, yes, same.
Fraction of a
Yeah.
second, well, the definition.
Yeah, and so in a driverless, truly autonomous world, that light would signal the cars that it's getting ready to turn green. The other cars are signaled that the other one's turning red. They start to stop. That light turns green. All 6 cars in a line start progressing at one time. That's a perfect world scenario. In a truly connected car community, theoretically, or I should say hypothetically, there should be minimal crashes as long as those functions all operate. Now, can I say there will never be any crashes? No, I would never be that bold, but it would drastically minimize them.
And 2 more questions about your vision and mission. Did your CEO consult with the company when working on the new vision and mission? And is your new mission appealing to your shareholders?
Excellent question. So, first question was, did they consult?
Yeah, so your CEO consult with the company when working on the new mission and vision.
Okay, they did not ask me personally.
Okay. Even though you have a leading role, that's not good.
Yeah, so that did take. Again, with it being a Tokyo Japanese-owned company, it is very Japanese-centric. And so there is still some of that old traditional values, so they do everything very close to the vest, and the regions find out about it kind of after the fact. Now, there are regional representatives on expat assignment in Japan. They are a part of that group, so it's, I guess, by default representation, we were involved, but not directly.
So your shareholders like your new vision?
Sure, yes, yeah. So that has, any of these, before they come out, it's not that they are run by the shareholders, but the shareholders accept it. There was never any, discussion or challenging in any shareholder meeting that I've heard of.
And how's the stock doing?
Well, you had to ask today. I don't know. No, the stock overall as a company is okay. The automotive sector is way down, so that's weighing on the company. But again, we're in a difficult environment, so it's challenging to say the least.
Thank you very much. So our last speaker for today